Dubey sir, you can please unmute and introduce Ashwini sir.
Okay. So, good evening, friends. It's a pleasure to be back this evening with the Indore Study Circle. And our speaker this evening is Professor Ashwini Kumar. Uh, Many people in the Krishnamurti Study Circle would be knowing him because uh, he is widely talked about. He has given number of talks. Recently, he had organized a seminar in the university where he's working in Canada. And Professor Kumar is going to talk to us on his own journey with Krishnamurti's existential inquiry at a personal level and in the context of his academic life. For those who may not know Professor Kumar very well, I'll briefly introduce him to you. Dr. Ashwini Kumar is an associate professor of education at Mount St. Vincent University, Canada. He is the author of two scholarly books, Curriculum as Meditative Inquiry, which was published in 2013 by Palgrave Macmillan, and Curriculum in International Contexts, Understanding Colonial, Ideological, and Neoliberal Influences. This was also published by Palgrave Macmillan in 2019. He is also the editor of Engaging with Meditative Inquiry in Teaching, Learning, and Research, Realizing Transformative Potentials in Diverse Contexts. This was published by Routledge in 2022. He has served as the president of Arts Researchers and Teachers Society Canada. His book Curriculum as Meditative Inquiry was chosen as an outstanding academic title by Choice Reviews, American Library Association in 2015. His co-authored paper, Teaching as Meditative Inquiry, a dialogical exploration, which describes his pedagogical philosophy and practice, received the Outstanding Publication in Curriculum Studies Award from the Canadian Association for Curriculum Studies in 2019. He is the recipient of the Mount St. Vincent University President and Vice President Advanced Career Teaching Award in 2022 and University of British Columbia's Faculty of Education's Alumni Educator of the Year Award 2022. He has a multifaceted personality. He plays the harmonium and sings and composes Indian classical music. His current project focuses on researching the theory and pedagogy of Indian classical music and their significance for culturally responsive education in Canada. If somebody wants to know more about him, one can see his website and also the YouTube channel. With these words, I want to extend a very warm welcome to Professor Ashwini Kumar and also want to thank him on behalf of Indore Krishnamurti Study Circle that he could accept our request and is being with us today for this session. So, sir, you can begin your lecture and you can talk to maybe 50 minutes to an hour, after which we'll open the session for question and answer or comments or whatever. So it's your turn now. Please unmute yourself and you can begin now.
Thank you so much, Dubeji. I'm really happy to be here, and thank you to Harshit Parekh for recommending my name to the Indore group. It's really a pleasure to be here to see so many folks interested in the work of Krishnamurti, and Krishnamurti has inspired and influenced me quite deeply in so many ways, about which I will share with you in this talk today. So that's the focus of the talk, my journey with Krishnamurti. I because you all have read Krishnamurti quite seriously, I'm sure. So you are very aware of what Krishnamurti talks about and what his key emphasis are. So rather than giving a talk on Krishnamurti, I would share my journey with Krishnamurti and what I have learned from him, and then maybe we can engage in a conversation with each other. So for a while now, all of my classes, when I teach in my classes and when I conduct seminars and talks, I begin them with a relaxation exercise. Would it be okay if we begin with that? Would everybody be fine with that?
Yes, yes,
All right.
absolutely, absolutely.
All right. So I invite you to close your eyes if you can, or you can look down. Have your feet firmly on the ground, your back straight, shoulders relaxed. See if you can connect with your breath a little bit. Just paying attention to it. Let your body be restful. And just get in touch with your breath. Now bring your attention to your thoughts and just observe and see what's happening there without trying to push anything away or control it. Just observing what's happening in the mind for a few moments. Now bring your attention to your heart. And notice any feelings that you may have at this moment. Again, without pushing them aside, just observing, just noticing, acknowledging. Please take a few deep breaths. And join us when you are ready. So thank you again, everyone, for having me here. And as I mentioned before this exercise, that I will be speaking about my personal and professional journey with the work of Krishnamurti. So I will be speaking autobiographically. And I'm not going to be reading a paper to you, but I have few points to help me guide so that I'm staying on the path and I'm able to share whatever I want to share with you. First, in the very beginning, I would like to share with you how I came across Krishnamurti and with what mindset. As you can see, I'm not that old, so I haven't met Krishnamurti in person. I came to know of Krishnamurti through the writings of Osho. And as you know, which is not only true for me, but it's true for many people. A lot of people, especially those people who read in Hindi or who speak Hindi, primarily heard of Krishnamurti through Osho, because Krishnamurti's work began to be translated in Hindi a little bit later, not right away. So a lot of people in the Hindi speaking regions came to hear of Krishnamurti from the work of Osho. So I'm going to be telling you a little bit what I discovered in Osho's work and how I got connected to Krishnamurti through that. But just a little background from my youth and childhood. When I reflect back, of course, you don't know who you are and how you are in the childhood, but through reflection, through autobiographical reflection, I could see that as a teenager, I was quite interested in spiritual inquiry, in understanding, and I would say the spiritual inquiry was more about critiquing the orthodoxies and superstitions that I saw around me. And the greatest help in that exploration came from the work of Kabir, which you all know. When I'm speaking to Western audience, I have to explain about Kabir and who Kabir was. So luckily, I don't have to do that. But Kabir had a quite a deep impact on me when I was growing up, and I was quite taken by, without even fully understanding that how radical and critical was Kabir as a poet and a philosopher and as a thinker, who was trying to awaken both the Hindus and Muslims of the to the orthodoxies that pervaded the society at that time. It was largely a Hindu nation, but a Muslim rule. And I think Kabir was very brave and radical in the way he tried to show to the people that the real spiritual inquiry, the real meditative inquiry, is not pursuing a particular path and doing the rituals mechanically and without your full involvement in what you're doing, just doing because you have been conditioned to do so. And it's very clear that is so connected to Krishnamurti's work. At another place, I have talked about how Krishnamurti's and Kabir's thoughts are so connected with each other, although they are so miles apart. So Kabir's work laid the foundation of a deeper critical inquiry. He kind of opened my mind as a teenager to ask questions and not to accept the things as they are, and not to follow the family traditions or ceremonies and rituals as they are, but actually ask them questions. So you can see I was quite a pain in the neck of people around me because of my desire to ask questions. And my family, I would say, was quite respectful to a great extent and let me be the way I wanted to be. In my the early 20s, when or just before that, when I started my university at Kirodimal College in their geography program, I was at my sister's house and I heard my brother-in-law, my jijaji, hearing a tape of Osho on Bhagavad Gita. And that piqued my interest. Okay, who is this guy, and who can talk with so much authority and clarity, and there is so much poetry in it, so many insights. As a teenager, 18, 19, 20-year-old person, to me that was quite quite powerful without understanding who this person is, what his background is, what he's talking about. And just a coincidence, a friend of mine, very close friend of mine, Anurag Balyan, who has been reading Krishnamurti's work, gave a book of Osho to me. And the title of the book was Dhyan Sutra. In English, we can say Principles of Meditation. I'm not sure if you are familiar with that book or not. But the primary focus of that book, which I understood at that time, was to be aware, to deepen one's awareness of the mechanisms of the body, the mechanicalness as well as the intelligence of the body, to develop the intelligence of the mind, to understand the mind, how thoughts operates, where they come from, their contradictory nature, their fragmentation, and similarly about feelings. What are the roots of the feelings? How feelings begin within you, and how they impact your day-to-day actions. So I would say that book, I quite seriously experimented with that book. And from quite early on, whenever I read a book or whenever I engage with anything, I engage with my whole being. It was not partial, that maybe I'll just do a little bit, or maybe I just skim it through or just touch upon it. I went all in, and I quite deeply experimented with that book. And I would say that that quite laid the foundation for me for a number of things, including realizing the significance of living a life of existential awareness, not just intellectual analysis. And Krishnamurti talks about it very clearly, not just intellectually thinking about awareness, but actually experimenting with awareness in one's day-to-day life as one is living and interacting with other people. So then on, I read quite a few books by Osho, first in Hindi, because I grew up in a Hindi-speaking family. I went to a Hindi-speaking school. I started learning English properly. I had it as one subject in my throughout my school education, but I started learning it more seriously and with conviction when I went to the university. So, and I was taking it very passionately, that I need to learn English, I need to understand English, because the world is, I felt kind of is after colonialism and British rule around the world, is quite interested in English. Although at time I was not that critical of English. I thought because this is the only way I can make my space in society. I'm very critical of it now, since I have understood that how colonialism and the rise of British Empire marginalized other languages and cultures around the world. And in India, it's very clear that how Hindi and other languages have been quite suppressed because of the market influence of English and its prominence. Somehow being educational and educated is linked to one's ability to speak in the English, whether there is any depth in it or not, whether there are any insights in it or not. So that little footnote to tell you that I primarily read Osho in Hindi for quite a while, and then I switched to English. And I read many books and experimented with many forms of meditation. And through that, I discovered a few things that I would like to share with you. Number one, that the most significant thing in one's life is to understand oneself. If one is not interested in understanding oneself, everything else is a waste. There is no point in living a life which is not rooted in self-understanding. Second, the door to self-understanding is meditation. So if anybody is interested in self-understanding, it's paramount that they become interested in meditation. And what is meditation? The core of meditation and the soul of meditation is awareness, is paying attention to one's body, mind, and thought as one is living in one's life, and as Krishnamurti calls it, without choice, without discrimination, without judgment, to living an intensely aware life, but not using awareness as a way to suppress what one is thinking and feeling and acting, but actually observing it, and through that observation learning more about it. Another thing that I learned, that throughout human history there have been many insightful people, and this how should I say, this area or this quest for self exploration is quite old. It's very ancient, and a lot of people throughout the world, depending on their circumstances, depending on their their context, their environment, and their own intensity of self exploration, have contributed quite seriously to this domain of self understanding and self exploration. So like the example that I gave of Kabir and Nanak and so many other people, those who thought that spirituality and self-exploration is central to life, have contributed a lot to our understanding, including Krishnamurti. I see Krishnamurti is in the chain of this ever-flowing river, where people have come and contributed to this river of self-exploration, self-understanding. The next point that I learned from my readings and from my exploration was that while you can learn from others, you can engage with others, you can engage in dialogical engagement with others, the only true door to understanding is self-experimentation and inquiry. Nobody else can give you the truth. You can only discover, you can only understand about yourself through self-inquiry and through experimentation. Even when you read something, even when you experiment with something, the real understanding is always going to come to you from your own exploration and not from somebody else. And I think Krishnamurti emphasized that point quite clearly. And the last point, you can only understand truth, you can only understand yourself if you are brutally honest and authentic with yourself. So if you play games with yourself, if you trick yourself, if you convince yourself to have understood something, to have known something, without actually truly have gone through that, then the seeds of inquiry or the seeds of true exploration cannot take place. So one has to be brutally honest and authentic with oneself. And as I mentioned, that when I was reading Krishnamurti, when I was reading Osho, I would often see him refer Krishnamurti's name at many places. And not just Krishnamurti, Gurdjieff's name, Kabir's name, Nanak's name. And I was always interested in understanding the work of Krishnamurti, because primarily whenever in many instances Osho mentioned about Krishnamurti, he mentioned it in the context of awareness, that Krishnamurti's primary focus, the Krishnamurti's primary teachings is to be fully, deeply, choicelessly aware of who we are as human beings. I picked Krishnamurti up in my early 20s. I couldn't follow him, what he was saying, so I put him down. When I was, I would say around 24, 25 years old, I went to Central Institute of Education to pursue my bachelor's in education. And at that time, I realized that Krishnamurti was being referred to in a number of courses, in philosophy of education courses. In a course I attended called Peace Education, Krishnamurti's name was mentioned. And I said, wow, that's very interesting, because and the another thing that I recognized before being in the discipline of education, I was in the discipline of geography. And geography, although can have very meditative and spiritual quality, as we see when we read Krishnamurti and his description of nature, it's a very meditative kind of a geographical spiritual understanding. But the way geography was being taught, the way it was being engaged, it was quite, it doesn't have that spiritual quality, that spiritual flame. So when I came to the field of education, I was very surprised, because for the first time I saw that there are people who are critiquing the education system, the mechanistic and instrumental nature of the education system, and also highlighting the importance of self-understanding, although not to the extent, they weren't doing it to the extent I wanted. Their primary focus was critique and criticism. But the good thing was that people were open to talk about Krishnamurti, and that I found very heartening. And there were a lot of books by Krishnamurti in the library of the Central Institute of Education, and I read Krishnamurti quite seriously at that time. Education and the Significance of Life, Freedom from the Known, First and the Last Freedom. And my most favorite aspect that I loved in Krishnamurti's writing was his dialogue with David Bohm. That touched me a lot, and still continue to be some of the best literatures that I have read in my life. So because I saw that there is an openness to Krishnamurti's ideas in the Central Institute of Education, I started asking folks a lot of questions there, students, professors, that why don't we discuss Krishnamurti in a much more elaborate manner? And not only Krishnamurti, I think that's also the impact of colonial, European colonialism, that we marginalized all the perspective that exist within our own culture. Of course, Krishnamurti is a unique case because he defies all cultures, but there was Rabindranath Tagore, there is Gandhi. So many other people have talked about education as a more holistic enterprise than as a way to get a career. And what I noticed was that those ideas, those holistic perspectives on education were not being discussed. It was primarily focused on a field called critical pedagogy. And for those of you who may not have heard of this term, critical pedagogy is basically a way of educating where you make aware, where you make your students aware of the injustices, the discriminations, the problems, and the oppressions of the society. And I started voicing my concern that because the most of the people, when I ask them why Krishnamurti is not fully present in the discourse, the response that was given to me was that because Krishnamurti doesn't talk about social injustice, because Krishnamurti doesn't talk about poverty, because Krishnamurti doesn't talk about discrimination. And I said, wow, your argument is completely ill-founded. If you read Krishnamurti carefully, that's his primary concern, that there is conflict in the society, there is oppression in the society, there is exploitation in the society, and that exploitation, conflict, chaos is connected to how we think and live as human beings. And unless there is a fundamental transformation within ourselves, we cannot transform the social structures. So changing the social structure has to be accompanied by, even preceded by, changing in your own consciousness. That was very hard sell, and the reason for that was because I don't think people read Krishnamurti very seriously. They thought that Krishnamurti was elitist, that Krishnamurti was the teachers of the rich, people who are well-fed, and that's why his schools catered to rich people. So I saw the point in that. It's not that I completely denied that, but what I also realized that they are missing the point. They're not seeing what the Krishnamurti's work is all about. So I kept having my discussion in my master's thesis. When I was going to write my master's thesis, I said I'm going to write my master's thesis on Krishnamurti, but I was told, because you work on, because you are a social studies teacher, maybe you should write a thesis on social studies, and maybe you should write on the theory and philosophy of Henry Giroux, who is a American educator who works in Canada now. I was like quite surprised, and I said, no, I'm not going to do that because I am interested in Krishnamurti's work. So what I ended up doing was integrating Krishnamurti's insight with critical pedagogy. Critical pedagogy being concerned about changes in the outer structures of the society, and Krishnamurti being interested in the inner structures of human beings and how those inner structures sustain and produce the outer structures. Uh, I ended up doing a thesis, and I think it was well appreciated by people who understood that there is a need, there is a high need and high importance of bringing self-inquiry, self-understanding in the domain of education. And you know, the other reason why a lot of people become concerned with the idea of self-inquiry is because of the rise of conservatism in India and other people, where education, where religion was used as a vehicle for education, and a lot of people became concerned with uh, the religious education in the traditional sense of the term, where an organized religion controlled the education. So, but I think it was still very important for me to highlight that religious education in the sense of Krishnamurti and religious education in the sense of propaganda and conditioning are two very different things. Those who are in Krishnamurti circle, of course, understands these distinctions very clearly. But the folks, those who are not in Krishnamurti circle, I think these distinctions made to be clear, and I try to do that. After finishing my Masters of Education, a number of my teachers encouraged me to pursue my PhD abroad, because field of education as a discipline is not still, unfortunately, not very well developed in India. So I came to University of British Columbia in 2007 to do my doctorate in education. And in the beginning, when I began my program, I was convinced that I will continue to integrate Krishnamurti's work with critical pedagogy, that I will continue to do what I did in my master's work and just continue to expand upon it. But excuse me, but when I went through the coursework, I realized a number of things. Number one, there was a lot of emphasis on Western educators. So I clearly noticed that the way they were educating, not much emphasis was paid to the thinking about education that existed in other part of the world. And now we have a term that we used to call this phenomena, it's Eurocentrism, prioritizing your own knowledge, your own understanding. The other thing that I noted was that a lot of emphasis was given to thought, philosophical, intellectual thought, and cultivating philosophical and intellectual thought, but without paying any attention to the thought itself, to the movement of existential thought within ourselves, the feelings, the memories, the experiences, the images that goes on within ourselves. There was hardly any emphasis on it, although there were perspectives like phenomenology, psychoanalysis, existentialism, educators like Dwayne Hubner, James McDonald, Ted Oki, who were kind of hinting in that area, but still it was primarily it was primarily a thought-centered or a intellectually committed education, rather than a holistic education where the whole being is involved. Although there are people like Jack Miller and other educators who talk about it, but it was marginal, on the very margins. And in the beginning, I was quite engaged. I used to have a lot of discussion with people about it. So my PhD time was very immensely fruitful to me. I had intense discussion with what was going on and what was missing. And the other thing, the one of the significant thing that happened for me, because when I was in India, traveling in Indian cities is quite problematic. In Delhi, I was a school teacher going from the home to school, then school to, I was pursuing my part-time Masters of Education to the university. By the time I would come home, it would be quite late. And that's the kind of life I lived for a while. Very busy, very intense, very little space for yourself. But when I came to do a PhD, luckily I had a scholarship, so I was lucky in that regard. I had time. For the first time, I felt that, wow, I have time and space. And those of you know about University of British Columbia, it's located in Vancouver. And British Columbia is one of the most beautiful places on earth. There's so many beautiful places around the world, including amazing places in India. But I really loved being on the Vancouver campus. And here, what I was reading in Krishnamurti's work about observing nature, about listening to nature, began to flower very naturally, because you're surrounded by nature, you're surrounded by oceans, you're surrounded by the mountains. And so the reading of Krishnamurti was never intellectual for me, even from the beginning, but became much more driven by what I was seeing in the nature, the patterns on the leaves, on flowers, the colors of the sky. It became quite prominent for me to see. There is something called a Zen Japanese garden in at the University of British Columbia, where I would go and spend hours and hours. So there was an inner inquiry going on in relation to Krishnamurti's work. And outwardly, I was quite intensely engaging with my colleagues about the significance of Krishnamurti's work, and that it's a problem that it is not being talked about and discussed at length in a PhD program, or even in a master's or undergraduate program. But I couldn't blame them, because in India that is absent. So how can I expect Canadians to kind of pay attention to that kind of a discourse? Although the discussion was happening and the intense dialogue was happening, I was also feeling that I'm not able to fully convey what I want to convey, because there is not like a proper space. So in one of my courses, our professor gave us a choice that pick any text that you want to present on. And I said, wow, that's great. I picked a dialogue between Krishnamurti and David Bohm. Those of you who are aware of the book, The Future of Humanity, I think it has maybe 2 or 3 dialogues, perhaps 2. I gave the dialogues in advance of the class and links to the YouTube video to my professor and to all the students, all of my classmates. They read it prior to the class. And then in the class, we had an intense discussion. Like, first time I got 2.5 hours to talk about Krishnamurti and to respond to the questions from my classmates and the professor. And that was an amazing experience, because that experience made me very clear that my passion lies here. My passion lies in exploring my own self and exploring Krishnamurti's work and engaging with people about that work. So not just limiting it to myself, because prior to that, education, exploration, meditation, primarily spiritual inquiry meant to me that it is for myself. But then it changed. It changed in the sense that I thought that I need to integrate the personal and the academic, personal and the professional. And I remember when at one point a psychiatrist came to Krishnamurti and said, I'm completely fed up with psychiatry. I just want to leave psychiatry. I want to do something completely different. And Krishnamurti said, no, don't leave psychiatry, go change it. Because if everybody leaves it, everything, then who is going to do any real work that needs to be done in those contexts? So that idea of escaping the situation or escaping escaping the context never became important to me. Sannyas never became a thing of escaping from the world, but it became as a way to be in the world and engaging with the world with as much passion and intensity as possible. So I continued with my academic journey and created a dissertation called Understanding Meditative as Curriculum Inquiry, wherein I drew upon Krishnamurti's insight and the insights from a US educator called James McDonald, who very surprisingly is quite closely. There are quite a few close parallels between him and Krishnamurti, including their emphasis on self-understanding and transformation in consciousness as the way to bringing about transformation in the structures. So in my doctoral thesis, I basically explored four principles. And I said that these are the four principles of curriculum-based meditative inquiry. And you will see it's quite rooted in Krishnamurti's work. The first principle was that human consciousness is in conflict, that there is a tremendous crisis going on inward and outward, and there is no denial to this fact. We can't deny this fact. Second principle was that educational systems around the world are a reflection of this crisis. So what is happening in the domain of education is not independent of what's happening in human society and human psyche. Education is reflecting it and perpetuating it, this crisis. And the third principle was that if we want to understand this crisis, if we want to transform this crisis, then we need to grapple with it. We need to meditatively inquire into it as an existential process, not just intellectually analyzing the problem, because the Western tradition is very apt at it, analyzing the problem, intellectually analyzing the problem, and I would say they have done quite well in that area. But that alone doesn't solve the problem. We have seen it very clearly. You can learn everything about climate crisis, everything about nature, that still doesn't solve a thing, because we haven't got the relationship with the nature that Krishnamurti says, right? So bringing in the meditative inquiry aspects in exploration of social, political, economic, personal, and educational problems. And the last principle was that if we want to see education as an instrument of change in society, then we must create space for meditative inquiry in educational context. That is, education must prioritize, not just have one of its components, but centralize, prioritize study of consciousness as central to its role, to its activity. My dissertation was very well received. I converted the dissertation into a book called Curriculum as Meditative Inquiry. Professor Meenakshi Thapan, who all of you know, wrote a wonderful foreword to this book, to which I'm very grateful. When I was doing my PhD, towards the end of my PhD, there was a professor, her name was Professor Karen Meyer. Actually, I want to mention that although not many people had read Krishnamurti very closely, I was very lucky to find this professor who has read Krishnamurti very closely and really considered his work to be very important. So she was part of my committee member. And when I was close to finish my PhD, she sent me a poster of a talk by someone called Ashutosh Kalsi at Simon Fraser University. That's another university in Vancouver. And I said, wow, that's a great thing that somebody is doing a talk on Krishnamurti. I must go and attend the talk. I attended the talk, and through that talk, I thought, wow, this is great. This person also is so interested in Krishnamurti. Ashutosh's thesis explored the connection between Krishnamurti's and Friedrich Nietzsche's work, and I heard his talk. I liked everything that he was saying, and I said, okay, we should meet at some point. So I went to see Ashutosh, and when I met Ashutosh, I think I really want to highlight this point because it kind of was a new phase in my personal journey. So when I met Ashutosh, when I was in India, I was getting quite dejected because of the corruption in India, because of the pollution, because of the authoritarian culture. You don't have a voice, you don't have a say, you have to call everybody sir and madam. There is no the problem in respecting people, but India has a very deep rooted authoritarian and hierarchical culture, which I think Krishnamurti was trying to uproot, but it is so difficult. It's like as if ingrained in our DNA to maintain this authoritarian and hierarchical system. So I was very frustrated and disgusted with it, and I was feeling that while I found people who were friends, like amazing friends, and some amazing teachers, largely it was very difficult for me to be independent and to say what I want to say. And that, I would say, is an amazing quality of the West, that it does give you the space to be yourself and to say what you want to say, although there are extremes in that too, but I won't go in discussion in this context. So through my PhD program and the reception of my ideas, I felt quite secure, or quite contented, that now what I am saying is being heard, people are liking what I am saying, so I am in a good spot. Krishnamurti calls it psychological security, right? You're feeling that you're secure, which is always a means of suppressing your insecurity, because no amount of money, no amount of recognition, no amount of respect, no amount of gratification can actually make you feel secure. You're always secure. You may feel that you are feeling secure because other people look at you and say, yeah, we like you, or we appreciate what you have, or we recognize what you have, and through their appraisal, you begin to appraise yourself, thinking that you're secure. But when I met Ashutosh and engaged in intense dialogues with him, through those dialogues, it became very clear to me that in actuality, I am, even through the work of Krishnamurti and through what I am doing, basically it's a movement of security. I have understanding, I am inquiring, I am exploring, I am able to convey to the folks what I am trying to convey, but deep down, is it the same movement of finding security? It became very clear to me through those dialogues, and Ashutosh and I continued to have those dialogues for years, very intensely, and continue to still have them, not as frequently though as they happened before, but they happen when there is a need. So those of you who don't know Ashutosh Kalsi, I would say he is one of the very few people who I have met who has real, original, authentic insights, not only into what Krishnamurti is saying, but his own insights. And that's walking on Krishnamurti's path, pathless path, if I can say. That through Krishnamurti, if you are reading him right, if you are experimenting with his work rightly, your own intelligence should awaken. And then you should begin discovering your own insights. If you continue to repeat Krishnamurti's words, if you continue to have dialogues only what Krishnamurti is saying in the same framework, in the same circle, in the same limitation, you haven't got what Krishnamurti is saying. And it made very clear to me from Ashutosh that actually it is possible for someone to just not repeat Krishnamurti or Buddha or any other teacher or praise them, but actually discover your own insights. It's absolutely possible. And that continued. So, but when I think now I reflect back, I'm trying to connect the dots. It's very hard to go into the past and tell exactly what happened. It's always a story, it's always a narration, and it's always partially true. It's not always 100% true. So the partial truth that is coming to my mind, that through those deeper discussions and realizing that the movement of my life is the movement of seeking security, of course, the mind gets completely shattered and it doesn't know what to do then. It kinds of become in a paralytic state. That you become, you go into a kind of a crisis. So I don't know what is the right action. What should I do? Should I work? Should I not work? Should I leave? Should I publish? Should I not publish? Should I earn money? Should I not earn money? What to do? So all those questions starting circling in my mind intensely, and that kind of led to an inaction outwardly. I remember very clearly that there used to be a time, so I started learning music in that time too, but I'll come to that in a little bit, that a harmonium is sitting in the center of my living room, and I'm sitting on a couch and I'm saying, gosh, I don't have the energy to move this instrument to the side so that I can clearly walk into the room. So you can see the amount of inaction that pervaded me. Can't move, cannot do anything, don't want to do anything. When I would go for walks in the park, that's the only thing I would say I liked in that time, is going for walks in the park. And each step was so heavy. I'm recalling it distinctly now. Even just to leave for the walk, I'm sitting on a chair, I need to go for a walk, but there is no desire to act, to get up and go. And when I'm walking in the park, each step is heavy. Each step seems like, oh God, but being in nature was the only thing that I felt relieved me. It kind of created some space within me. Now, this experience that I was having was quite internal. So externally, it was not that my life was completely in a disorder, that I wasn't able to go to the university or to university to teach or to engage with people. Outwardly, it was not possible for people to see what was going on inwardly, because I think I was very intensely aware of my internal mechanism, but others people were not. In fact, what I was noticing, the more intensely I was looking within myself, I was able to do the same with other people. I was able to look into what's happening inside of them, not reading their minds or anything, but actually sense and feel what they're going through, what they're feeling, what kind of thinking process is going behind behind their activity in relation to me. That kind of internal crisis, inaction went for a while, and in that space, I discovered my interest for music. I have always been interested in music, always wanted to learn music, never had the opportunity or the chance because of the financial limitations of my family and the time limitations later on. So when I came to University of British Columbia, I think I would sing before too. I've talked about my journey with music in some other context, so I just won't go in detail. But just in relation to this inaction and the crisis, music, as the inquiry was deepening, the music was coming out on its own naturally. So I would sing whole day, like uh, practically whole day, continue to sing something. And when I came to the city where I'm currently in, Halifax, I was staying with a friend of mine, and I asked him, I hope it's not bothering you because I just keep feel like singing. And he said, no, it's good, but I think you should also learn singing. I said, well, yeah, maybe I should think about that. And I was very lucky to find a Indian classical music teacher in Halifax. You know, Halifax is a very small city. Indian population has exploded here after the pandemic. A lot of Indian people and Indian restaurants and all that. But before that, very few Indians. And to find a teacher of Indian classical music was quite a thing here. So I began my journey with Indian classical music, and like being in nature, music became a way of expressing my innermost crisis, my innermost thinking, or my innermost feelings. And you know, Krishnamurti talks about originality, independence, freedom. All that I brought to music. I brought my inquiry to music. So I did not learn Indian classical music or Indian music in the way it is taught, in a strict guru shishya parampara, where guru is the ultimate authority and student has to follow. Because of the intensity of my own inquiry and love for music, I learned a lot of music myself, and actually I challenged my teachers a lot. I was kind of a sore in their eyes because I asked so many questions, and the only answer was, you are not ready for that. And I said, no, I'm ready. You just, because if the question is ready, I'm ready for the answer. You give me the answer, even if I don't understand it, it's okay. But you give me the answer, and then I will continue to explore it. But that's another story. The complexity of Indian system, I touched upon it, the hierarchy and the authority and all that. So through that, what happened is very unique, that I started writing poetry spontaneously and started composing music spontaneously. And that is a very shock to most people, especially people in India, because you have just started learning. You have been in the class for 3 months. The class only meets weekly. You are older. How can you think about composing music? But the composition was happening naturally. It was not something that I had a control over. So in that phase, I wrote a number of, and you know, the surprising thing, I wrote devotional songs. And that was so shocking to me, because here I'm criticizing everything, outer structures, the belief in God and everything, but the songs were very devotional. So through that, what I realized, that devotion is a feeling. A lot of people are devoted to Krishnamurti, but they would be very afraid to say that. Devotion is a feeling. It's a different thing to be devoted to a particular god, religion, organization, and then killing other people because of that. But to have devotions within you to nature, to a teacher who has ignited inquiry in you, I think the devotion is very significant feeling that we should have within ourselves. We have lost, because of being so head-centered and cognition-centered, we have lost that the quality of devotion. So I wanted to read a couple of my poems with you. They are in Hindi and English as well. I think Meena is probably the only person who wouldn't follow Hindi. Is that correct, Meena?
Unmute yourself, unmute. Yes.
I can't follow Hindi, but I can feel your soul, your heart, your being. So it doesn't depend on words. I don't mind if you don't.
I will translate it. I will do it in both languages. They are short. The reason I am reading them to you, you will see Krishnamurti reflected in these poems. First one is actually a kind of a ghazal. So I'll read it in Hindi first, and then share its translation in English. Its title is Nafrat ki Aandhiyan, Clouds of Hatred. नफरत की आंधियों का क्यों दिलों पे छाया साया, इस रंज दुश्मनी से क्या किसी ने कुछ है पाया, दिल हो गए हैं पत्थर और प्यार खो गया है, आंखों में सबकी जैसे इंसान सो गया है। जब खो दिया खुदी को सब पाके भी क्या पाया, जो सुकून नहीं है दिल में तब हाथ में क्या आया। गर झांके अपने दिल में और ढूंढे अपनी रूह को तो पाएंगे उसी को जो जग में है समाया। I'll read it in English now. The clouds of hatred. Why have the clouds of hatred overtaken our hearts? Has anyone ever found peace in conflict, animosity, or wars? We have turned the skies, the lands, the waters into our battleground. Our destructive tendencies have caused chaos in all spheres around. Our hearts seem to have become insensitive like stones, and the delicate love seems to have disappeared in our woes. What will we be left with if we lose our hearts and souls? What could be worth achieving if we lose our true roles? Were we to take a deep look within and find our being, we would discover that which permeates everything and every being. So I need to thank my wife for helping me translate these poems as well. She's in this call as well, and she was also one of the persons who I met during my musical journey. We met actually in the musical class. She is also very musical. Maybe we'll share our music with you sometime if we are in Indore. The next one is I am Mother Earth. मैं धरा हूं कुछ ध्यान करो, मैं मां हूं कुछ मान करो, फूली फूली सी हैं सांसें मेरी, जल रहा है चमन ख्याल करो। जंगलों को तुम मिटाते हो, सारे जीवों को तुम सताते हो, कहर ऐसा क्यों तुम मचाते हो। जाग जाओ वरना पछताओगे, मां जली तुम भी जल जाओगे, अब संभालो मुझे तुम प्यार करो। I am Mother Earth. I am the foundation of your existence. I am breathless. The whole of me is on fire. Please be aware. Pay attention. Don't be careless. Don't be cold. You have been destroying my forests callously and increasing global heat. You have been torturing animals and birds mercilessly, killing them for their meat. Why so much destruction? Why so little compassion? Wake up, wake up, or your actions will bring about an irreversible mess up. Could you be safe? Do ponder if your mother is in peril. Please be aware, take care, be loving and be fair. Love the trees, the waters, the skies and animals. I am Mother Earth, the foundation of your existence. So as you can see, it's not a Krishnamurti style at all, but it's Krishnamurti's thoughts. When I was writing these poems and thoughts, I wasn't thinking about Krishnamurti or anything. They just came. I used to call it creative explosion. They exploded, the poetry and the music. So if there is a time, I have some recorded music that I can share with you, but we may not have time. I can share it in other ways. So professionally, while I was not interested in publications and writing, because in the West it's publish or perish, I said, okay, I will perish because I can't do anything. I just can't do anything at the moment. So no matter what I try, I just can't do anything. Although later on, when my energies came back, when my sense of strength came back, I was able to write. I was able to publish, not for the sake of publication, some for the sake of publication, but mostly because I wanted to talk about these things. In the context of my teaching, I employed Krishnamurti quite a bit. I had Krishnamurti in my holistic education classes, in my curriculum studies classes, in my philosophy of education classes. Believe it or not, in some of my courses, we primarily focused on Krishnamurti. And I was very lucky to have been able to do that, because the syllabus is to be determined by me. And I had Krishnamurti as one of the central readings. So they read dialogues between Krishnamurti, Scheinberg, and David Bohm, wholeness of life. Dialogue between Krishnamurti and Anderson, a wholly different way of living. First and the Last Freedom, Education and the Significance of Life. Krishnamurti on education, education and the significance of life. And that was very life-giving to me, because students expressed a lot of interest in these ideas and Krishnamurti's perceptions. Although a lot of them also think Krishnamurti sounded pessimistic to them, and were challenged because Krishnamurti was like very critical of the organized religion, so it was questioning their faith. But overall, majority of them express such interest in Krishnamurti. You know, when I'm speaking with Krishnamurti people, probably they don't show that much expression and joy, because they already know that they already know Krishnamurti. But these students, they were really hungry for this kind of an engagement. And the way I was engaging with them is not presenting Krishnamurti as an authoritative teacher, but I was speaking more from my own experience and my more exploration, my own understanding of Krishnamurti, and helping them develop their own. So I would say it was very well taken. And through my pedagogical approaches, through my engagement with students, and you know, the one activity that I did in the beginning of this the session, a meditation, I developed a lot of reflective and meditative activities. I learned from others, but I also developed a lot of them on my own, which I can't do because we don't have time, like writing your reflections, writing your fears, writing the conditioning influences that influence the way you think. And students really appreciated reading Krishnamurti's writing and the writing of other educators, and actually experientially, meditatively, and reflectively understanding those ideas, not just understanding in the head, but actually understanding. So I would also take them for walks into the nature and ask them to observe and listen to what is happening, and so on and so on. Based on these engagements, I developed an idea called teaching as meditative inquiry. I have written a lot about it, and you know, I can share my website, so you can find all of these the pieces for free if you want. They're available, and the links are available. And I found that student took a lot of interest in the way I was articulating the idea of meditative inquiry. So I'm quite influenced and inspired by Krishnamurti, but as I said, I also love Kabir. I've also learned a lot from Osho, despite all the controversies and the criticisms around it, which I acknowledge. A lot of problematic things have happened, but I cannot deny my own experience of exploring his work and learning from it. I don't see any falsity. I never felt, oh, that was a waste of time, or I was misguided. I personally never felt that. The work of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky, I'm not sure if you are aware of it or not. There is a tremendously important book called In Search of Miraculous. So I tried to integrate what I learned through my teachers, through my own exploration, into an approach which I call meditative inquiry. I don't have the time, I think, but I will briefly describe the 7 principles that I have developed and engage my students and colleagues with. Number 1, questioning deeply about everything without fear. Critiquing social injustices, oppression, and discrimination. Often we see, if we are interested in Krishnamurti or spirituality, that it's only about us. But if we see Krishnamurti's work, it was always about the disorder in the society, not only just disorder within, but the disorder in the society. Celebrating the freedom to think, to observe, to express, and to be. Cultivating awareness of the way one thinks, feels, and acts. Partaking and rejoicing in the creative flow of life. Understanding relationships and connecting with people and nature deeply. Participating in dialogue with oneself and others honestly and authentically. I have been organizing quite a few of dialogues, conferences, seminars to educate people about Krishnamurti's work. As Dubeji mentioned in his introduction, I organized a conference on Krishnamurti with my wife Neha Acharya, and it's available on YouTube if anybody is interested. And recently I also organized a conference on a book I edited on the concept of meditative inquiry. So I have been quite engaged. Now, there are still periods in which I go in isolation and don't engage too much, but I feel that I have the energy and the strength and the motivate to engage people around these ideas and to emphasize the significance of living a deeply aware, a deeply committed, and a life that has the quality of intensity, quality of possibility, quality of passion, of creativity in it. And that's why I was very happy when I was asked to give this presentation and talk. And I enjoyed tremendously sharing my thoughts. I hope it was enjoyable for you. And I think it's time for questions. Folks are already raising their hands. So I'm here to respond to your question. And I'm sorry if I took longer. I thought I would be finished in 20 minutes and then rest would be for discussion, but intensity took over. So
Thank you, Professor Srinikumar. I think it was a very interesting discourse and such a wonderful journey. I have no words to say. I'm really speechless. Thank you. Thanks a lot. We have hardly about 13 minutes to. I'll request people to be very, very brief. We start with Shakti ji, then go to Dinesh Bagmare, Pradeep Parmar, Rajendran, Hansa ji, and Harshat Parekh. Yes, Shakti ji and Harshat Parekh first. Shakti ji, please go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Yes, sir. My voice is reaching, sir.
Yes.
yeah.
I just wanted to ask them that, there is this mindfulness and Krishnamurti. Do you think that they meet these circles, they meet somewhere? Because Krishnamurti talks about a quality of listening, quality of watching, being aware when one is doing something. So do you think it's part of Krishnamurti discourse? Thanks.
That's an amazing question. And I wish I had a lot of time to elaborate on it, but I'll very briefly discuss. Mindfulness is rooted in Buddhist tradition. And I think Buddha's primary focus was also awareness, as Krishnamurti's was. But around all people, around all traditions, a layer of rigidity and regimentation developed. That developed around Buddha, and I'm sure it will develop around Krishnamurti too. That's one thing. The other thing is mindfulness doesn't have as much depth and intensity about the inner world of human being. What's happening in mindfulness, it may appear similar to Krishnamurti. It is similar to Krishnamurti, but there is a danger of suppressing your thoughts and emotions, because mindfulness says focus on your breath, focus on your navel, right? Focus. Concentration is very central to mindfulness. And that's why it is being co-opted by corporations, right? Okay, if being mindful makes you less stressed and more efficient, we are all good for it. we will give a little bit of time to our employee because ultimately they will produce better. So mindfulness has a great danger because it is technique centered. It prioritizes techniques in an instrumental fashion to deal with the problem of the modern day society. So mindfulness without fully understanding Krishnamurti is dangerous, can be dangerous. It has been dangerous.
Thank
I
you.
hope it responds to some extent. But in
Thank
its soul, in its soul, if you see mindful, be aware, I think it's very close to what Krishnamurti is saying.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Dr. Harshad Parekh.
Yes, are you able to hear my voice?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Ashwani Kumar. You spoke very fluently and you had no difficulty because you are in the academic world. So everything was coming very fluently. And you said a lot of things. And I also like Kabir and Krishnamurti. And there was one theosophist called Rohit Mehta. He used to travel with his wife all over the world, and his wife will sing Kabir's bhajan, and Rohit Mehta will give a talk on Kabir and Krishnamurti, and a book is published, and it's very interesting book to read. And
It's on my list to read.
Okay.
I know about it's on my list, but I haven't had the chance. But at some point, yes.
It's a very good book. And the other thing I like to say that when I came to know about Krishnamurti by chance, for 7 years I did not discuss, no dialogue with anybody, but I was reading and looking within, and I found that it was very, very interesting, and some changes begin to happen in my life, which my friends also noticed. And another thing I want to say is about Krishnamurti. Somebody asked Krishnamurti that your schools, why it is only for rich people? And Krishnamurti said, we are not talking about rich people and poor people. We are talking about the human mind. And the human mind works in a very similar way, whether they are rich or poor. So I think that is the way the human mind Krishnamurti is trying to touch. And maybe the poor people may not get the opportunity to study in Krishnamurti schools, but there are some scholarships are there. And another thing I like is about music and nature, because I also feel very happy to just walk around and the music, because music is kind of a devotional and very artistic. So along with Krishnamurti, it is good to have a different, not just being intellectual and talking all the time, but really relaxing, enjoying nature, being quiet, silent. So, and I'm very happy that you are bringing interest in Krishnamurti in young people in the university. And if they are really getting something, then it is a very good work you are doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for all of your comments. Just one point. I think what happened in the field of education, that the government controls education, right? If the government lets schools to be independent, that the government can fund the schools and school can run the way they want to. That's why all the alternative educational institutions, including Krishnamurti schools, they have to be private because the government doesn't want to fund it. But if the government funds it, then there would be so many educational experiments, but the people are not interested in that, right? They want to control education.
Yes, yes, that is true. Yes, Dineshji, we can take.
Are you able to listen to me, sir?
Yes, yes. We have 6 minutes, so please be brief.
Yeah, I am having 2 questions for you. In your personal inquiry, what did you find the meaning of self-understanding or self-inquiry? This is number 1. Number 2, what did you find the core or essence in the Krishnamurti's teaching? Is it awareness or is it other the other dimension.
Well, I think I have discussed that to some extent, but I can maybe share a little bit more. So when anybody looks within themselves, they find a lot of things, some patterns, some rigidities, a lot of influences, some the feelings that they continuously have. So to me, self-understanding has been a process of understanding myself. So if I have a fear, where is that fear coming from? Not only understanding it only intellectually, but staying with the feeling of fear, which is very difficult because you want to run away from that feeling. You don't want to. So it's very easy to talk about intellectually, to stay with fear and be with fear. But when fear actually happens to you, or when you feel jealous, to be with that is very difficult. You have to be really interested in that. And you have to be very delicate about it, that you don't suppress it, that you don't try to run away from it, that you let it be. And it shakes your complete being, but it also makes you extremely intelligent. So self-awareness or self-understanding for me is to study yourself, to learn about yourself, but not just intellectually, but existentially. Because through that understanding, your brain, your mind becomes very intelligent, and it's able to deal with situations and complexities much more intelligently than it generally is able to, if it is dealing with them through the process of intellectual analysis. And I would say, to me, the central focus of Krishnamurti's work, to my understanding, is awareness. But in the hope that awareness will bring about deeper personal and social transformation. But personal and social transformation can become ideals and ideologies. It's primarily the awareness to stay with what is. So Dubeji, a thought was coming to me that there is very little time for question answer. I would be happy to appear at some point and engage with folks' questions if you want something like that. But I'm also happy to just finish it here. We have 3 minutes.
I think, Sushilji, can we extend it for 10 more minutes?
No, sorry, I can't. Unfortunately, I can't extend it. Maybe I can extend it for 10 minutes. I can extend it. Yes.
Okay.
That's what we are asking you, sir.
Yeah.
10 minutes only.
Okay,
Professor
perfect.
Kumar, we'll have you in future also, so that we can continue with this dialogue for a little more time.
For sure, yeah, that's why I was thinking that the folks who were here, I can engage in a much more in-depth way with their question at that time.
Okay. So we'll finish it off with one question more. I think we'll take Varmaji's question, close
Sure.
it, and then maybe have another session with you where we would like to hear music also, because we have heard the poetry. We would like to have the music as well. Yes, Varmaji,
Sure.
the last question. Yes.
Thank you. Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Thank you, Ashwini. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I find a new friend listening to you. Education in real sense demands a very close association with nature. Now, nature and life both are in danger with fast-changing technology and structuring of education through virtual realities present in the entire, and this presents an entirely different paradigm. So this may be called as concretization of education. Even classical music, you see a great role of nature and seasons, educating us non-verbally. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. I can't agree more. I cannot agree more. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Verma, and thank you, Ashwini ji, for being with us. It was a very interesting talk, and I think there will be many more questions about your journey through case teachings. So we'll have another long session, and then we can have lots of questions. Thank you. Thanks again. Thanks a lot. Good night.
Sir, you have to declare the topic for the next Sunday.
Next Sunday we have, I don't remember who is the speaker next Sunday.
Gopalan,
Yes,
sir.
Okay, so Mr. S. Gopalan, who is he was associated with the Valley School, Bangalore. He'll be talking to us, and I don't remember the theme of his talk, but it will be at 11 a.m. next Sunday. So please join us if you're free. And as usual, I think Gopalan's lectures are very interesting. So I'm sure you will be happy to hear him. Thank you.
And
Ashwini ji. Thanks a lot.
next Sunday is the holiday. Everybody is interested in that. That's a New Year date, 1st January. So
1st
let
January
them
will not
prepare
have
for
any
holiday
session.
also. Special preparation for holiday.
Okay. So I will
Thank
we'll wish the new year next Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.
On 8th, we will have Rajan Chandi.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
New
you.
Year.
All right,
Product will
Dubey
end it.
ji, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
No
you,
words.
everyone.
And we will call you soon, sir.
Okay, bye bye.